My name is Lucinda Price. I'm 29 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment just outside the city. The lights in the reception hall were blinding. The music had already stopped, but my ears were still ringing like something inside me had shattered. I sat at table 7, gripping the stem of my champagne glass so tightly I thought it might crack in my hand. At the front of the room stood my mother, Eleanor. She held a microphone in one hand and a thick ivory folder in the other. I had never seen her look so proud, so radiant. Beside her stood my younger sister, Delilah, glowing in her wedding dress like she was the center of the universe. We wanted to give the newlyweds something truly meaningful, my mother announced, her voice echoing across the hall. So today, we are giving them the deed to our family home. The room erupted. Applause, cheers, people rising to their feet. Delilah screamed in pure joy and threw herself into my father's arms. He laughed, holding her like she was the greatest thing he had ever created. And me, I didn't move. I couldn't breathe. For 5 years, I had been the one paying the mortgage on that house. Every single month. Money left my account to keep that roof over their heads. I skipped trips. I worked overtime. I gave up pieces of my life so they wouldn't lose everything. But no one in that room knew. To them, my parents were generous, loving, selfless. To them, Delilah was the lucky daughter. And I didn't exist. I stared at my mother's smiling face, and something deep inside my chest finally cracked. Here's a more natural, emotional, and engaging English version of your message. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what the weather feels like where you are right now. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. This is a fictional story, thoughtfully enhanced with the help of AI to make it feel more vivid and real. Now, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and stay with me until the very end. My name is Lucinda Price. I learned how to be invisible long before I understood what that word really meant. It wasn't magic, it was survival. In my house, there was only enough light for one person, and that person was Delilah. She was 2 years younger than me, but she filled every room completely. When she laughed, everyone listened. When she cried, everything stopped until she felt better. And me, I was the background. I was the furniture, the table that held everything together, the quiet rug that absorbed the mess no one wanted to deal with. I remember one night when I was 12. I came home from school burning with fever. My head throbbed. My throat felt like glass, and I could barely stand. I dropped my backpack in the kitchen, the sound echoing louder than it should have. My mother stood at the counter, carefully decorating a cake, chocolate, Delilah's favorite, earlier that day. Delilah had scraped her knee during gym class. It wasn't serious, just a small red mark, but she had cried about it for hours. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse. "I don't feel well." She didn't even turn around. "Not now." "Lucinda," she said, focused on shaping a sugar flower. "Your sister is having a terrible day. Her knee is hurting. Go lie down and don't make a fuss." I stood there, swaying slightly. I wanted to scream that I was burning up. I wanted her hand on my forehead. I wanted something. But I already knew the rules. Delilah's pain was a crisis. Mine was an inconvenience. So I did what I always did. I took care of myself. I got water, found the thermometer, took medicine, put myself to bed. The next morning, I got up alone, made toast, and went to school. That afternoon, I came home with an A on my history project. My father barely looked up. Good, he said. That's what we expect from you. You're the smart one. That was the trap. They called me easy, said I was independent, low maintenance. They said it like it was a compliment, but it wasn't. It meant they didn't have to try with me. All their energy, their love, their money went to Delilah if she failed a test. It was the teacher's fault. My parents would fight the school until her grade changed, if I got anything less than perfect. They asked why I didn't try harder, so I became the fixer. When I was 16, the washing machine broke and flooded the laundry room. My parents weren't home. I didn't call them. I already knew they wouldn't come. So I shut off the water, grabbed towels, opened the machine, and fixed the clog myself. By the time they got back, everything was clean, dry, working again. I fixed it. I told my dad. Good job, he muttered, not even looking up. Then he turned to Delilah. How was dance? Princess, did you get the lead? I stood there, my hands smelling like dirty water, watching them celebrate her like I wasn't even in the room. That was the moment I understood something. My needs were invisible, because I had trained them to be. I thought if I was perfect, if I caused no problems, fixed everything, asked for nothing, they would finally love me the same way they loved her. I thought usefulness would earn me a place in this family. I was wrong. Being useful didn't make them love me more. It just made me easier to use. I grew up believing love was a transaction. I give, you give back. But I kept giving, and I was still waiting to see what I would get in return. In the story of my sister's life, I wasn't the main character. I wasn't even a side character. I was just the one holding everything together behind the scenes so she could shine. The moment I stopped being just the helper and became the one responsible for everything happened 5 years ago. It was a gray Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sky feels heavy and quiet. I had just been promoted at work. I was 24, working as a project manager at a logistics company, finally earning good money. I was proud of myself. I had my own apartment with my boyfriend, Ethan, and we were saving for a trip to Italy. Then my phone rang. It was my mother, Eleanor. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Lucinda, you need to come right now, she said. It's a disaster. I didn't hesitate. My heart started racing as I drove over, convinced something terrible had happened when I walked into the kitchen. I froze. My parents were sitting at the table. My father, Richard, looked drained, his face pale. My mother was twisting a tissue in her hands. The table was covered with letters from the bank, stamped in red. What's going on? I asked. Is everyone okay? My father let out a shaky breath. We're losing the house. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they explained. Bad investments, credit card debt, refinancing the house again and again until there was nothing left. They were 3 months behind on payments, and the bank was about to take everything. We don't know what to do, my mother said, her voice breaking. This is our home. We can't lose it. I looked down at the numbers. It was worse than I expected. They needed 3,000 immediately just to stop foreclosure, and then 2,000 every month after that. They didn't ask me. They just looked at me. Those same eyes that had overlooked me for years were now filled with desperation, locked onto mine like I was their only answer. I didn't even think. I can help, I said. The words came out automatically. I had always been the one who fixed things. This was just another broken system, only bigger. I'll cover the mortgage, I told them, until you get back on your feet. My mother jumped up and wrapped her arms around me. Oh, Lucinda, thank God. You're an angel. Just for a little while, she promised. Just until your father recovers. A little while turned into 5 years. The next day, I transferred the money. I watched my savings drop in a single click. The Italy trip was gone. That night, I tried to smile at Ethan. It's okay, I told him. It's family. They need me. It won't last forever. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. As long as they appreciate it. Lucinda. They didn't. A month later, I went to visit them. I had been eating instant noodles for weeks to save money. I canceled my gym membership. I wore the same worn-out shoes because I couldn't afford new ones. When I walked into their living room, the first thing I saw was a massive new flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. Do you like it? My mother asked, smiling brightly. Delilah said we needed something better for movie nights. I felt my stomach tighten. Mom, how did you pay for that? I just covered your mortgage yesterday. She waved her hand like it didn't matter. Store credit. No interest for 6 months. Don't be so negative. Lucinda, we deserve a little happiness. I didn't argue. I swallowed it, like I always did. I told myself they were stressed, that they needed comfort, that this was temporary. Every month, I sat down at my computer and made the transfer. $2,000. Gone with a click. Again and again. That money could have been my future. A house of my own. A wedding. Security. Instead, it became the cost of keeping their life intact. They never once asked if I was struggling. Not once did my father say, Lucinda, is this too much for you? They just assumed I would handle it. Or maybe they didn't care where it came from. As long as it kept coming, I stopped traveling. Ethan and I stayed home, cooking cheap meals. I worked overtime just to keep up. I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. And still, they lived like nothing had changed. They went out to dinner. They bought Delilah new clothes for interviews. They kept up the image of a perfect, stable family to everyone else. They looked successful. But I knew the truth. I was the one holding everything together, feeding my own future into the fire so they could stay comfortable. And the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the silence. After a while, it wasn't even something they acknowledged anymore. It was just expected. Lucinda pays. Lucinda fixes. Lucinda doesn't need anything. I was financing a life I didn't live, for people who didn't see me, while slowly losing the life I could have had if I was the shadow. Then, Delilah was the sun, and my parents lived in her light. What hurt wasn't just the money. It was what it meant. It was about who mattered. 2 years after I started paying their mortgage, Delilah finally graduated. It took her 6 years to finish a 4-year degree because she kept changing majors. Trying to find herself, my parents covered everything. Or rather, the money that should have gone toward their debts went to her tuition, her sorority fees, her lifestyle. For her graduation, they threw a huge party in the backyard, the same backyard I was paying for. There were tents, a DJ, catered food, and an open bar. I stood off to the side with a soda, quietly doing the math in my head. At least $4,000, 2 months of mortgage payments. I walked over to my father. Dad, this is a lot. I thought money was tight. He laughed, already tipsy, and clapped my shoulder. Relax. Lucinda, it's your sister's big day. She only graduates once. Then came the gifts. They led everyone outside to the driveway. Sitting there was a brand new car, wrapped with a red bow. Not luxury, but new, clean, reliable. Delilah screamed and jumped into their arms. You're the best parents ever. I felt something inside me go cold. When I graduated, I got a card. Inside was $50. I remembered standing there in my cap and gown, holding it while my mother smiled and said, "You're so capable. Lucinda, we know you'll use it wisely. $50. I glanced at Ethan. His hand tightened around mine. His jaw was clenched. This isn't right, he whispered. I nodded, but I said nothing. I never said anything. Later that night, I found my mother alone in the kitchen. A car. Mom, I asked quietly, I'm paying your mortgage, and you bought her a car. She sighed like I was the problem. She needs it for interviews. How else will she get a job? You already have everything. Lucinda, you're stable. She's just starting out. I looked at her. I needed help too. She shook her head. But you didn't need it. You always figure things out. Delilah needs support. That was always the story. I was strong, so I deserved nothing. Delilah was fragile, so she deserved everything. It showed up in small ways too. When Delilah had a breakup, my mother stayed with her for a week, cooking and comforting her. When I had a health scare and needed a biopsy, my mother just said it was probably nothing and told me to call with results. Being the invisible child doesn't destroy you all at once. It wears you down, slowly, quietly, until you start believing it. Maybe I don't need anything. Maybe I'm built for this. Maybe I don't matter. But I did matter. And those feelings didn't disappear. They built up, sharper every day. I watched Delilah sitting in her new car, honking the horn while my parents laughed like everything was perfect. From the outside, we looked like a happy family, but I knew the truth. I wasn't a daughter in that picture. I was the one paying for it. I was the one keeping it alive. And people like that don't give resources gifts. They use them. Then came the engagement. Delilah met a man named Adrian Cole. He was charming enough. But just like her, he wasn't careful with money. Together, they dreamed big. A fairy tale wedding. My parents, of course, promised to give it to her. We want to give her everything she deserves. My mother told me over the phone, her voice full of excitement. I closed my eyes. Mom, you can't afford a wedding like that. You're still in debt. You still owe on the house. Don't worry about the house, my mother said lightly. We have a plan. I didn't ask what that plan was. I already knew. The plan had always been me. In the months leading up to the wedding, the spending only got worse. Every time I visited, There were invoices scattered across the counter. The florist alone cost more than I made in a month. The dress Delilah chose was more expensive than my first car. I tried to reason with them. "You're digging yourselves deeper," I said one evening. My father's expression hardened. "Stop being so negative. Lucinda, this is a celebration. Family supports each other." I swallowed my words again. The wedding day came faster than I expected. It was held at an exclusive country club just outside the city. Everything was perfect. Crystal centerpieces shimmered under soft lighting. Thousands of white roses filled the room with a heavy, sweet scent. A live orchestra played as guests arrived. It looked like something out of a movie. I stood beside Delilah as her maid of honor, wearing the pale yellow dress she had chosen. It washed me out. But that didn't matter. Nothing about that day was meant for me. I held her bouquet, adjusted her train, smiled when the photographer told me to. Then I watched my father walk her down the aisle. He looked overwhelmed with pride, his eyes shining with tears, like this moment was everything he had ever dreamed of. I sat in the front row next to Ethan during the ceremony, my hands folded tightly in my lap. "How are they paying for all this?" he whispered, glancing around at the luxuries surrounding us. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know." But a cold, heavy feeling had already settled in my chest. Something wasn't right. The ceremony ended, and the reception began. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter filled the room. Speech after speech painted a picture of a perfect family, a perfect love story. Then my father stood up. The room quieted instantly. My mother stepped beside him, holding a familiar folder in her hands. "We have one final gift," my father announced, his voice carrying across the hall. "Adrian, Delilah, we know starting a life together isn't easy. We want to give you a strong foundation." My mother smiled brightly, lifting the folder slightly. "We didn't want to give you something ordinary," she said. "We wanted to give you a future." My breath caught. I knew that folder. I had seen it before. "We are giving you our home," she continued. The words echoed, but they didn't fully register at first. "The deed is yours, completely paid off. It's all yours now." The room erupted into applause. People stood, cheered. Some even wiped away tears. Delilah gasped, covering her mouth before throwing herself into our parents' arms. Adrian looked stunned, overwhelmed. It was perfect. A cinematic moment. Generous parents. A lucky daughter. A beautiful beginning. And me, I sat there, completely still. They paid off the house. Those words kept repeating in my head. Paid it off. How my stomach dropped as the answer slowly, painfully formed. I already knew. How the question echoed in my mind, but the answer came just as quickly. Maybe they used my father's retirement savings. Maybe they sold something. Maybe they found money somewhere and never told me. But none of that was what truly hurt. It was the way she said it. "We're giving them our home. Our home. The home I had paid for. The home I had kept standing for 5 years. Every bill. Every payment. Every sacrifice I made was woven into those walls. I had kept the lights on. I had kept the doors from closing for good. And now they were handing it away like it was nothing. Like it had always belonged to them. Like I had never existed." Delilah clung to them, crying into the microphone. "You're the best parents in the world." My father held her close. "We love you, sweetheart. I turned slowly toward Ethan. His face had gone pale. His eyes were wide, filled with disbelief. He knew exactly what that house had cost me. Lucinda, he whispered. Did you know about this? I shook my head. No. The word barely came out. My voice felt empty, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I looked back at the stage. For a brief second, my mother met my eyes. She didn't look ashamed. She looked happy. She even gave me a small, excited smile, like she was sharing a beautiful moment with me, like she expected me to feel proud. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. She didn't understand. She didn't understand that she hadn't just given away a house. She had given away my life. 5 years of work, 5 years of exhaustion, 5 years of putting myself last. All of it wrapped neatly into a gift for her favorite child. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, final, like a rope breaking under too much weight. All those years of being the good daughter, fixing everything, giving everything, hoping that if I just did enough, they would finally see me. They never did. They never would. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. Delilah was the daughter. I stood up. Ethan reached for my hand immediately. Where are you going? I need air, I said. I walked away without looking back. Past the laughter, past the music, past the glasses clinking and the voices celebrating something that was never mine. I stepped outside into the cool night. The air hit my face, sharp and real. I didn't cry. I was beyond that. I stood in the parking lot, staring up at the sky while the muffled sound of the reception pulsed behind me. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. The scheduled transfer was there. $2,000, set to send in a few days. I stared at it for a moment. Then I pressed cancel. And after that, delete. It was just a tap on a screen. But in the silence of that night, it felt loud, final, like something ending for good. I lowered my phone slowly. I was done. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, a message from my mother appeared on my screen. Bright, casual, as if nothing had happened. Family dinner at Delilah's new house. Sunday at 6 p.m. Dad is making his famous roast. Don't be late. I stared at the message for a long time, sitting at my desk under the harsh office lights. That familiar weight settled in my stomach again. For years, I had carried it. Obligation. The quiet pressure that said if I refused, I would be the problem, the ungrateful daughter. That night, I showed the message to Ethan while we stood in our kitchen cooking a simple meal. Do you want to go? He asked, watching me carefully. I shook my head. I don't. But if I don't show up, they'll twist it. They'll say I'm jealous, bitter, that I can't handle Delilah having the house. He set the knife down. They already twisted everything. Lucinda. But I'll go with you. You won't face them alone. Sunday came faster than I wanted. The drive felt longer than usual. Every street brought back a memory. Every turn reminded me of another payment, another transfer, another piece of my life I had handed over. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed Delilah's car parked where my father's used to be. My parents' car was on the street now. That alone said everything. We walked up to the door, but it opened before we could knock. You made it, my mother said brightly. wearing an apron like she belonged there. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me instantly. Roast meat, rosemary, something warm and familiar. It was the scent of my childhood, but the house didn't feel the same. Be careful, my mother said, guiding us in. I'm rearranging things. Delilah needs better energy flow in here. I glanced into the living room. Furniture had been moved around awkwardly. The old sofa I had helped pay to restore was pushed against a different wall. The coffee table sat at an odd angle. Delilah was on the floor, flipping through a magazine, not lifting a finger. Hi, Lucinda, she said casually. Do you like it? It looks different, I replied. My father walked in from the kitchen, holding a glass of wine. He looked relaxed, carefree, like someone who didn't have bills hanging over his head anymore. Lucinda, Ethan, he said loudly. Welcome, sit down, dinner's ready. We took our seats at the table. The same table. The same place where 5 years ago they told me they were losing everything. The same place where I agreed to save them. Now I was just a guest. My mother brought out the roast, carving it with a flourish. She served Delilah first, giving her the best portion, then Adrian, then my father, then Ethan. Finally, she placed a small, dry piece on my plate. So, she said, smiling as she sat down, isn't this nice, all of us together again? It's perfect, Delilah said. Thanks. Mom. I nodded quietly and took a bite. It tasted like nothing. We talked for a while. Small things. Weather. Neighbors. Adrian's job. Then my father cleared his throat. He set his fork down and glanced at my mother. That look passed between them. The same look I had seen my whole life. A decision already made. We have some news, he said. My stomach tightened. My mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Since we gave this beautiful house to Delilah and Adrian, she began lightly. Your father and I are technically homeless. She laughed, like it was a joke. We can't stay here forever. She continued. They're newlyweds. They need their space. They shouldn't have to live with us. I set my fork down slowly. So, you're looking for an apartment, I asked. Delilah let out a small laugh. An apartment? Mom would hate that. She needs a garden. My father nodded in agreement. Exactly. We are not apartment people, my father said firmly. You know that. Lucinda, we need space. Ethan's hand tightened around mine under the table. So what's the plan, he asked. My mother turned to me, her eyes bright, almost excited. We've decided the best solution is to move into your lake house. She said it casually, like she was suggesting dessert. The room went quiet. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. I blinked. I'm sorry. What, your lake house? She repeated slowly. The one by Silverwood Lake. It's perfect. Fully furnished. Quiet. And it has a garden. We can move in next weekend, my father added, sipping his wine. It's empty most of the time anyway. No point wasting it. We'll cover utilities. You'll handle the mortgage and taxes. Obviously, it's your property. They had already planned everything, discussed it, agreed on it. All that was left was for me to accept. I looked at them. Really looked this time. They truly believed everything I had belonged to them. Because I was the capable one. Because I always said yes. They had taken my money for 5 years. They had taken the house I saved, and now they wanted the only thing I had left. That cabin wasn't just property. It was mine. I bought it broken, spent weekends repairing it piece by piece. I chose every detail. It was the only place that felt like it belonged to me. We already started packing some things. My mother said cheerfully, "I'll need the alarm code, and maybe a new key set, just in case." She held out her hand, like I would simply hand it over. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't hurt. It was anger. Sharp, clear, unavoidable. I looked down at my plate, then at Delilah, who was scrolling on her phone, completely uninterested. I took a slow breath. "No," I said. The word landed heavily in the silence. My mother blinked. "What did you say?" "No," I repeated, meeting her eyes. "You are not moving into my lake house." My father gave a short laugh. "Come on, Lucinda. Stop joking. We need somewhere to live." "I'm not joking." My voice didn't shake. "You gave away your home. That was your decision. You didn't ask me. You didn't think about what came next. We did it for your sister." My mother snapped. "To give her a start." "And what about mine?" I kept my tone calm. "I paid your mortgage for 5 years. That was my start. You took it. You never even said thank you. And then you gave the house away. That's in the past." My father barked, slamming his hand on the table. "Why are you so obsessed with money? It's ugly." I held his gaze. "I bring it up because you're asking me to give you another house. You want to live there for free while I keep paying for it. Just like before." "We are your parents," my mother cried, her voice rising as tears filled her eyes. "How can you be this selfish? We have nowhere to go." "You do," I said. "You just don't want to pay for it yourselves. You want me to do it." She turned to Delilah. "Say something. Tell her she's being unreasonable." Delilah looked up, annoyed. "Lucinda, just let them stay there. You barely use it. Don't be so dramatic." I stared at her. "If you're so concerned, why don't they stay here?" I asked quietly. "This is a 4-bedroom house. I paid for it too. Remember?" She immediately pulled back. "No, we just got married. We need privacy." I nodded slowly. "So do I." I pushed my chair back and stood up. My legs trembled, but I didn't sit back down. "The answer is no," I said, steady and clear. "You are not moving into my lake house. Don't go there. Don't even try. You are not welcome." My father pushed his chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. His face turned red as he pointed at me. "If you walk out that door, don't come back. You're turning your back on your family." I met his eyes without flinching. "No, Dad. I'm turning my back on being used." I turned to Ethan. "Let's go." He stood up immediately, dropping his napkin onto the table. "Great dinner," he said dryly. "Shame about everything else." My mother's voice followed us as we walked away. "You ungrateful child. I hope you end up alone in that cabin. If you believe my parents were right to give away the house I had been paying for, and even felt entitled to demand my lake house afterward, then comment, give them the house. But if you think what they did was deeply unfair and hurtful, feel free to write greedy parents. I'd really love to hear your perspective. Because stories like this can be seen in so many different ways. Sometimes, your voice helps bring clarity to everything I went through." I opened the front door and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit my face, sharp and real. It felt like escaping something burning. I was shaking, terrified, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't get the key into the ignition. I sat there staring at the steering wheel, my breath uneven. I can't believe I said that. I whispered. I can't believe I actually said no. Ethan reached over gently and took the keys from me. Move over. I've got it. I slid into the passenger seat as he started the car. As we pulled away, I glanced back at the house. The windows glowed warmly in the dark, like nothing inside could ever be broken. From the outside, it looked perfect. No one would ever guess what had just happened. No one would ever guess the daughter who paid for everything had just been pushed out. I didn't cry until we reached the highway. Then it came all at once. I cried for the little girl who tried so hard to be perfect, for the teenager who fixed everything without asking for help, for the woman who sent money every month, believing it would earn her a place in her own family. It never did. Ethan held my hand while he drove. It's okay, he said softly. Let it out. You've been carrying this for too long. By the time we got home, the tears were gone. What replaced them was something colder, clearer. They're not going to listen, I said as we walked into the apartment. They think this is temporary. They think I'll apologize tomorrow and hand over the keys. Then we make sure they can't get in. Ethan replied. I sat down at the kitchen table without even taking off my coat. I opened my laptop. Step 1. My phone. I opened my contacts and selected my mother. I scrolled down and pressed block. Then I did the same for my father. I hesitated for a second when I saw Delilah's name. Then I remembered her voice. Don't be so dramatic. I blocked her too. The silence that followed was immediate. No messages, no missed calls, no guilt waiting on the other end. Step 2. The lake house. I logged into the security system and removed every access code except mine and Ethan's. I deleted the emergency code I had given my parents years ago. Then I changed the main password. They still have an old key, I said quietly. Ethan nodded. We'll handle that. For now. Make it impossible for them to stay. I picked up my phone and called the security company. I need to update my account. I told the operator, if the door is opened without the correct code, even with a key, I want the police contacted immediately. Of course. She said, we'll flag the property. Step 3. Proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I logged into my bank account and searched transfers to my parents. The screen filled instantly. Page after page of transactions. 2,000. 2,000. 2,000. Month after month. I hit print. The printer hummed, filling the room with the sound of paper stacking. I gathered the pages and placed them into a binder, organizing everything carefully. When I finished, it was thick, heavy. I opened it and began adding the numbers, one by one. The final total appeared on the calculator, $124,500. I stared at it in silence. That number wasn't just a number. $124,500. That was a house of my own, a master's degree, a wedding, a future I never got to build. I had given them everything, and somehow, I was still the selfish one. Look at this, I whispered, turning the calculator toward Ethan. He stared at it, his expression changing instantly. Lucinda, that's the price of my stupidity, I said quietly. He shook his head. No, that's the price of your love. You tried to help them. You believed in them. That's not stupidity. That's generosity. I knew he was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. I closed the binder slowly. Then I picked up a marker and wrote one word across the spine. Paid. I placed it on the shelf like something final. I'm done, I said. I'm not giving them another cent. The next morning felt different. For years, I used to wake up and reach for my phone, already bracing myself. Another problem, another emergency, another request. That morning, there was nothing. No messages, no missed calls, no crisis waiting for me. I got dressed for work, put on my favorite blazer, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, but I also looked steady at work. I moved through my day like normal. Meetings, emails, conversations, and every time my mind drifted back to them, every time guilt tried to creep in, I pictured that binder. I pictured the number. I pictured that dinner. We need your house. And just like that, the guilt disappeared. 2 days later, I received an email from my father. Subject: Lake House Weekend. Lucinda, stop being dramatic. We're packing the truck and heading to the lake house on Saturday. Make sure the alarm is off. We'll discuss your behavior when we arrive. I read it twice. He didn't believe me. He still thought I would give in. He was counting on it. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to Ethan. Then I forwarded it again to the local police department near Silverwood Lake. I wrote a short message. I am the legal owner of the property. These individuals have been told they are not permitted on the premises. If they arrive, they are trespassing. I pressed send. This time, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was taking control. Saturday morning felt almost peaceful. I was at the grocery store, standing in the produce aisle, checking avocados like it was the most important decision in the world. It felt normal, calm, exactly what I had been missing. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. This is Safeguard Security. A woman said quickly. Is this Lucinda Price? Yes. My heart started to race. We're receiving a breach alert at your property on Silverwood Lake Drive. The front door sensor has been triggered. Everything around me faded. The noise, the people, the movement. Did they enter using a code, I asked? No, ma'am. It appears the door was opened with a physical key. The alarm was not disarmed. The system is active. They did it. My father had actually done it. He ignored everything. My words, my warnings, my boundaries. He drove hours just to force his way in, because in his mind, he had the right. Call the police, I said immediately. They're already on the way. The operator replied, they'll be there shortly. I'm heading there too. I said, I'm the owner. I want them removed. I hung up. I left my cart right there in the aisle. I didn't care. I walked straight out to my car and called Ethan. They broke in. I said, I'm on my way. He answered without hesitation. The drive to the lake house blurred together. I barely remember it. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. My thoughts were sharp, focused. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. They had taken my money. They had taken my past. Now they were trying to take the only place that still felt like mine. When I turned onto the gravel road leading to the cabin, my chest tightened. And then I saw it. Flashing lights. Blue lights cut through the trees like something unreal. 2 police cars were parked in my driveway, their sirens silent but lights spinning, casting sharp flashes across the cabin and the surrounding woods. My parents' SUV sat crooked on the grass. The trunk was open. Suitcases were scattered beside it. A cooler leaned against the bumper. They hadn't come to visit. They had come to move in. I parked behind the cruisers and stepped out slowly. The air smelled like pine and dust, but the calm I used to feel here was gone. My mother stood on the porch, shouting at one of the officers. She wore her usual weekend outfit, as if this were just another casual trip. "This is ridiculous," she was saying. "This is my daughter's house. We're family. You can't treat us like criminals." My father sat on the steps, his head in his hands. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. One of the officers turned as I approached. "Ma'am, please stay back." I lifted my voice. "I'm the owner, Lucinda Price." He studied me for a moment, then nodded and walked closer. "They're claiming they have permission to be here," he said. I looked past him, the moment my mother saw me. Her expression changed instantly. The anger vanished, replaced with relief. "Lucinda," she called out, rushing toward me. "Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them we live here." She reached for me, trying to pull me into an embrace. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." She froze, like she hadn't expected resistance. I turned to the officer. "They are my parents," I said clearly, "but they do not live here. They do not have permission to be here. I told them in writing not to come." "That's not true," my father shouted, standing up. His face was flushed with anger. "She's lying. She's just being difficult. We have a key." He held it up like proof. "An old brass key?" I didn't even flinch. "That key is no longer valid. The property uses a digital system now. That was an emergency spare from years ago." "This is not an emergency." The officer's expression hardened slightly. "Sir, put the key down." My father hesitated, then lowered his hand. "I paid for her education," he said defensively. "I raised her. That doesn't give you ownership of her property." The officer replied calmly. He turned back to me. "Since there's no forced entry besides the use of a key, this would normally be treated as a civil issue. But you're here, and you're stating they're trespassing. We can remove them." He paused. "Do you want to press charges?" Everything went still. Even the wind seemed to stop. My mother looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Lucinda, please." For a moment, I just stood there. I saw everything clearly. The years of being overlooked, the money I gave, the sacrifices that were never acknowledged, the way they dismissed my boundaries like they didn't matter. I had the power to destroy them in that moment, to press charges, to let them face real consequences. But I didn't want revenge. I just wanted it to end. "No," I said. My mother let out a shaky breath, almost collapsing with relief. "But I'm not finished," I added, my voice steady. "I want them formally trespassed. I want it on record that they are not allowed on this property. If they come back, I want them arrested immediately." The officer nodded. "Understood." He walked over to my parents, pulling out his notepad. The owner has declined to press charges today, he said. However, you are being issued a trespass warning. You need to leave immediately. If you return, you will be arrested. My mother's face crumpled. We have nowhere to go, she cried. We gave everything up. We can't just leave. That's not something we can help you with. Ma'am, the officer replied. You have 10 minutes. I stood by my car, arms crossed, watching. My father, who used to act so confident, struggled with a suitcase zipper that wouldn't close. My mother threw clothes into the trunk in a panic, her hands shaking. They kept glancing at me, waiting, hoping. They wanted me to step in, to fix it, to say it was all a misunderstanding, to save them one more time. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched them realize that this time, there was no one coming to rescue them. Ethan arrived just as they were slamming the trunk shut. He pulled in beside me and stepped out, moving quietly to stand at my side. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. Solid, steady, unshaken. My father walked past us toward the driver's side of his car. For a second, I thought he would just leave without a word. But he stopped. He turned and looked straight at me, his face tight with anger and something else beneath it. Something wounded. You're cold, he said, his voice low but sharp. A cold, heartless girl. I don't even recognize you anymore. I didn't look away. I'm exactly who you raised. I replied. You taught me that money matters more than people. You taught me that feelings don't count. I just learned the lesson. He flinched. It was small, but I saw it. Then he turned quickly, got into the car, and slammed the door. My mother looked at me through the passenger window. She looked different, smaller, older. The confidence she always carried was gone, replaced by something fragile and uncertain. For a brief moment, I almost felt something soften inside me. Almost. Then the engine started. They backed out slowly, gravel crunching under the tires. One of the police cars followed them down the road, making sure they left the area. I stood there until the red glow of their taillights disappeared into the trees. Then the silence came back. Thick, deep, final. I walked up the steps to the porch, my footsteps echoing softly. The old brass key sat on the railing where the officer had made my father leave it. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried everything that had happened. I walked to the edge of the woods and threw it as far as I could. It vanished into the trees with a dull, distant sound. Gone. Are you okay? Ethan asked quietly as he came up behind me. I took a long breath, filling my lungs with the cool forest air. I think so, I said. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. He nodded. It's over now. For the first time. I believe that might actually be true. We went inside together. I reset the alarm system, checked every lock, every camera. Each small action felt like reclaiming something piece by piece. This place no longer felt like something I was protecting for them. It was mine, fully, completely. A boundary finally drawn. The days that followed were quiet on the surface, but the ripple effect spread quickly. I didn't hear from them directly. Blocking them had cut off the immediate chaos, but news still found its way to me. It always does. A week later, I met my cousin Mia for coffee. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat before speaking. They went to Delilah's house, she said. Of course they did, I replied, stirring my drink. How did that go? Mia let out a small, awkward laugh. Not well. Apparently, my mother showed up crying, expecting to stay. But Adrian had already turned the guest room into an office. He refused to move anything. I couldn't help it. A small, bitter laugh escaped me. So the golden child didn't make room. Mia shook her head. Delilah said they could stay on the couch. 2 nights. That's it. And she made them pay for takeout the first night. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't surprising. It was inevitable. Delilah had always been given everything. She had never been taught to give anything back. They left after 2 days. Mia continued. It was too tense, too uncomfortable. Without my money. Without a house to fall back on. Reality finally caught up with them. They had to find a place on their own. And it wasn't pretty. Bad credit. Limited income. Few options. They ended up in a small apartment complex on the south side of town. Not terrible, but nothing like the life they had pretended to live. 1 bedroom, thin walls, worn carpet, a place where no one was impressed. I learned the rest a few weeks later. My phone rang while I was at home. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. Lucinda. My mother's voice came through, soft and shaky. It sounded unfamiliar, stripped of its usual sharpness. What do you want? I asked. There was a pause. It's awful here, she whispered. The pipes drip all night. The neighbors are loud. It smells. I can't stand it. I said nothing. Please, she continued, her voice breaking. We made a mistake. We know we did. Can you help us? Just a little, maybe with a deposit for a better place? Or let us stay at the lake house for a while. Just the winter. We won't bother you. 5 years ago. That call would have broken me. I would have sent the money without hesitation. I would have gone to fix everything. But I wasn't that person anymore. I thought about the binder. $124,500. I thought about the wedding. We're giving them our home. I thought about the flashing police lights in my driveway. I can't help you, I said. My voice was calm, flat. You mean you won't? She snapped, a flicker of her old tone returning. I mean I won't. I repeated. You made your choices. You gave away your home. Now you're living with that decision. You can ask Delilah for help. She doesn't have money. My mother shot back. She's just starting her life. I let out a quiet breath. So am I said. But I spent my start taking care of you. I'm done. She broke into quiet sobs. You're cruel. I gave birth to you. I stared at the wall in front of me, and I kept a roof over your head for 5 years. I said, I think we're even. There was silence on the line. Then I ended the call. I sat there for a moment, waiting for guilt to crash over me, waiting for regret, but it never came. Instead, there was something else. Relief, lightness, like setting down a weight I had carried for far too long, and for the first time in my life, I realized something simple. I didn't owe them anything anymore. The lake house didn't feel the same anymore. Every time I thought about it, I saw flashing police lights and heard my father shouting, The place that once felt safe now carried tension and memory. It wasn't somewhere I could relax anymore. So that same afternoon, I made a decision. I called a real estate agent. "I want to sell the cabin on Silverwood Lake Drive," I said. There was hesitation on the other end. "It's a beautiful property." "Are you sure?" I didn't pause. "I'm sure. I want a clean break." We listed it the next day. Because of the work I had put into it, the response was immediate. Multiple offers came in, pushing the price higher and higher. Within 4 days, it sold for $80,000 more than I paid. When I signed the final papers and held the check, I felt something shift inside me. For a brief second, an old thought crept in. You should help them. They're struggling. This could fix everything. I shut it down instantly. That voice wasn't kindness. It was habit. It was the part of me that had been trained to give until there was nothing left. I refused to listen to it. I went straight to the bank and opened a new account. I named it Lucinda's Freedom Fund. I didn't tell my parents. They found out anyway. A few days later, my father sent an email. "We heard you sold the cabin. You made a profit. Your mother is under stress. If you have any decency, you will share that money with the family." I read it once. Then I deleted it, and I emptied the trash. It was simple, but it felt final. For the first time, I wasn't explaining myself or defending my choices. I was just done. The family dynamic began to collapse without me holding it together. Delilah kept her distance from them now that they needed help. My parents resented her for it, and they were furious with me for setting boundaries. But I wasn't involved anymore. I watched it all from a distance, like a storm behind glass. I could see the chaos, but it wasn't touching me. One evening at dinner, I looked at Ethan and smiled. "I booked something," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "What a trip." "Where, Italy?" He blinked. "Seriously, 2 weeks. Florence, Tuscany, Rome. First class." He laughed. "Surprised. That's a big trip." I shrugged. "I can afford it. I'm not paying someone else's life anymore." He smiled. "Then let's go." But it wasn't just a vacation. It was freedom. For the first time, my time and money were mine. I wasn't responsible for anyone else. I wasn't fixing anything. I was living. The situation with my parents was sad, but it was the result of their choices. And I wasn't going to carry that anymore. I had spent years trying to keep everything from falling apart. Now it was time to let it go. The first morning in Florence, I woke up early. The room felt unfamiliar, but calm. Light filtered in through the shutters, soft and warm. I lay there for a moment, waiting for the usual feeling, the anxiety, the checklist, the need to fix something. But it didn't come. There was only silence, peace. I turned and saw Ethan still asleep, relaxed and undisturbed. I got up and walked to the window, opening it slowly. The city stretched out beneath me, red rooftops, narrow streets, the distant dome of the cathedral glowing under the rising sun. It was beautiful. I stood there breathing in the cool air, letting it fill my chest completely. There was no tightness, no pressure, just space. I made coffee in the small kitchen, going through the simple motions slowly. Then I sat by the window and let myself think. It used to be dangerous to think about them. It always brought guilt. But now, it felt different. I imagined my mother in that small apartment, complaining about the noise, about the neighbors, about everything. I knew the story she was telling, that I had abandoned them, that I was selfish. A year ago, that thought would have destroyed me. I would have wanted to explain myself, to fix how she saw me. But now, I understood something I hadn't before. I couldn't control their version of the story. They could believe whatever they wanted. That didn't change the truth. My reality was this moment, the quiet, the peace, the life I had built. I took a sip of coffee and thought about that word they always used. Selfish. They used it whenever I chose myself, whenever I said no. But now, I saw it clearly. Keeping what I earned wasn't selfish. Wanting respect wasn't selfish. Protecting my life wasn't selfish. It was necessary. I had spent years giving everything I had, and when I stopped, they didn't ask if I was okay. They only complained about what they lost. That told me everything. They didn't miss me. They missed what I provided. If I sent money again, they would welcome me back instantly. But that wouldn't be love. That would be a transaction. And I was done being one. I wasn't a bank. I was a person. And if they couldn't see that, then they didn't deserve access to my life. Ethan walked into the room, still half asleep, wrapping his arms around me. "You're up early," he said softly. I smiled. I wanted to see the sunrise. He looked outside and nodded. "It's beautiful." "It is," I said. He studied me for a moment. "Are you thinking about them?" I paused. Then I shook my head. "No." And I realized it was true. This. This is what home feels like. He smiled. "Good. Because we've got a full day ahead." I laughed lightly. "That sounds perfect." My phone sat on the table, still silent. I picked it up for a second and looked at the blocked list. My parents. Delilah. There was a brief urge to check, to see if anything had changed. But I already knew. People like that don't change because you hope they will. They change only when they have to. And even then, not always. I put the phone down. I didn't unblock anyone. Because this wasn't punishment. It was protection. I finished my coffee, stood up, and stretched. For the first time in my life, I felt steady. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't responsible for everything. I wasn't the fixer. I was just Lucinda. And that was finally enough. Here is your natural, emotionally translated English version. If you would make the same choice as I did setting boundaries, stopping support for people who only take, and finally putting yourself first, then write, "I support you, so I know I'm not alone in this decision." If you would choose differently, maybe continue paying for them, or even give them your house. Feel free to write. Continue helping and share your perspective. I truly want to understand how you see it, and if you would take a completely different path. Tell me. Your opinion matters more than you think. This is my story, my turning point. The moment I chose myself after years of giving everything away. So what about your story? I'm still here. And I'm listening. There was a time when I believed love meant sacrifice, that if I gave enough, endured enough, I would finally be seen. But this journey taught me something deeper. Love should never cost you your dignity, your peace, or your future. I learned that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary. It's how we protect the parts of ourselves that deserve to be valued. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that save us, even if they break our hearts first. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to finally walk toward yourself. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself in a world that told you not to, then you already carry something powerful inside you. Feel free to share your thoughts, your story, because your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you believe in stories that bring value and healing, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. You're not just watching, you're helping build a space where people feel seen.
Welcome to Family Confessions. Our stories go beyond entertainment, helping viewers recognize toxic behaviors, understand boundaries, and reflect on their relationships, while reinforcing self-worth and the strength to heal and move forward. Each video follows a structured workflow ensuring quality and value for our audience. Thank you for being here.